is Friday the 14th, and I am heading to the office a little after 9 in the morning. I was waiting for the mail, hoping something cool would come, but it didn't. I'll show you something over here. Check this out. See that guy right there? Oh! He's doing his pre-trip. And that's what drives me nuts, because I get to listen to those guys do that all the time. And it makes me want to be able to do it too. Anyway. So, I've started contacting companies that hire newbies and non-bees. Roll my window here. So I've been in contact with a couple companies that hire newbies and wannabes and aren't bees yet and whatever, and getting some information on how they do their programs and what is expected of me as a student and so on. Kind of interesting information, you know. Some of their promises on their websites, their recruiting sites, aren't as, you know, they sugarcoat them, try and make them sound like they're cooler than they actually are on the website. So, but I expected that. That didn't really surprise me. So I'm working on figuring out which path to take. Want to get a couple of medical things checked out before I commit to doing something, so trying to get some scheduling done on some things. Like, I know they're gonna, you know, I've always had a huge neck, even when I wasn't heavy. I always had a huge neck. I think the smallest my neck ever was back in high school, and it was an 18-inch. So, and it's a little bigger than that, because back in high school I only weighed 203 pounds. And now I weigh quite a lot more than that. So I want to go get sleep apnea study done. I've been on blood pressure medication, mainly for headaches. My blood pressure was never really high a couple years ago when I went on it, but I was getting headaches all the time. And my blood pressure be like 140 over 80 or 85, and you know, that area, which my doctor said, I can't believe you're getting headaches from that, but as soon as he put me on blood pressure medicine, they went away. So I want to get that checked out, make sure that everything's cool there. And like I said, get the sleep apnea study done so that I know if I need a CPAP machine, so I can get one that'll run on 12 volts and be prepared and start using it so that I can be sure to be able to pass the medical. Don't wake up at night in my sleep choking to death or anything. I've never had that problem. I do snore, which is why the wife and I sleep in separate bedrooms, because she can't sleep because of my snoring. So maybe we'll move back into a bedroom. Probably not. She likes having her own room now. She didn't like the idea at first, but now she's loving it. So I wonder what that means. Anyway, yeah, so get that checked out, possibly get a CPAP machine in case I am losing oxygen at night, you know, getting too low. And then we'll be ready to make the plunge. Still waiting to hear back from Ivy Tech. I know it's their summer break, so they aren't working too awful hard to get paperwork pushed through and everything, so hopefully here soon I'll get some answers from them as to what I can do about paying for schooling there. one of the biggest reasons why I want to go to school there is because it's in state at Ivy Tech Sage. Sage schooling at Ivy Tech. It's here in the state. It's in Muncie. They have a couple locations, but Muncie's the closest one to me. So that's the one I'd really like to go to. I can actually drive back and forth every day. It's not that far, about an hour's drive. So, you know, figure the math, you're almost paying for a hotel room each night. So, you know, wife and I have been back and forth about which way to go, you know, because of the fuel cost and everything. But either way, if I stay down there, because when I talked to them, they told me that I have 2 weeks of 8 to 4 schooling, or 8 to 4:30, I think she said, school for 2 solid weeks, and then the next 2 weeks you're only getting a few hours a day, or a couple hours a day, something like that, of actual in the truck one-on-one training. And the one-on-one training also sounds good. Sounds like something I definitely would prefer. Not have a truckload of students where that truckload of students I get to count all that time, even though I'm not the one behind the wheel. So I'd prefer that one-on-one training, but it's here in the state. I can do everything locally. I can get my CDL. The testing center is right there. You know, they do the testing right there. The range you drive for them during your training is the same range you drive for the actual test. And then the road test, because they know where the road testing is, because they actually do it. You know, they take you over the road test several times, tell you, you know, you need this, you need to fix that, this, that, and the other thing, and so on. So by the time you actually take the road test, you already know everything, you're good to go. If I had to go to, say, Swift Academy, why is there an airboat over there? Alrighty then. Anyway, if I went to, say, the Swift Academy, the closest one to me is in Memphis, or down that way in Tennessee. If I were to go to Stevens Transport, their school is Dallas, Denver, and Houston, I think. So nothing close to me, which means I'd have to go to those schools, train, and then come back to Indiana to take the test on unfamiliar, you know, in an unfamiliar situation, which means I'd have to be a million times better. And as a newbie, you know, why put more stress and strain on you than you have to? You know, the real education begins when you go out with your trainer and start really learning how the industry works, how to maneuver and manipulate the truck to get it where you need it to be, and so on and so on. You know, this is just, you know, schooling is just the core basics, the very basics of how to, you know, learn how to operate the vehicle and do what needs to be done, and so on. So anyway, got some guys, some four-wheelers, even though I'm driving my pickup truck. Got some four-wheelers doing stupid things, so I'm trying to keep an eye on them. I give you guys like Jerry and Nick and Sam and Truck Josh and all you guys that are videoing while you're driving credit, because it's hard enough to do this in my pickup truck. I can't imagine how much fun it is to try and do it in a big rig, so kudos to all you guys. There are some trucking companies that have school here in Indiana, and PAM is one of them. But I have read, and I'm sorry PAM if this is totally off base, but I have heard and read so many negative things about PAM that it just, I can't look at going there. I mean, there's just so much negative, and you know, I'm one that I scour and search and research, and I want to know the truth as much as I can discover the truth. And there really isn't very many people that have much positive to say about PAM and their training program. And you know, people make jokes about penny a mile, and you sit for days on end because they don't have any freight to haul and so on. So it's, you know, you're just kind of like, well, what's, you know, why are so many people saying so much bad? You know, but like for instance, Stevens Transport, I've heard plenty of negative, but there's tons of positive. You know, I've heard lots and lots of people have positive experience with Stevens Transport, and I know people are down on Swift, but I've heard positive people out of Swift, and I've heard people down on Decker, and I've heard people with positive comments about Decker. So I put it all in a blender, and I, in my mind, for each company, and I think, you know, some of these people that complain, just, you know, the opportunity wasn't right for them. But the only positive things I've heard about PAM's training or working for them is that the videos that they made for the schools that they have. So until I find some drivers that have a lot of more positive things to say about them, I'm just going to stay away from them as a company. You know, what I used to do, there were companies, competitors against my previous employer, and you know, the horror stories about my previous company's competitor, I would never want to go work there. I talked to them before I took the job at my previous employer, and I did not get a happy vibe from that place. And right before I left, my previous employer hired one of their guys, and that guy did not have much positive to say about him. So that's kind of the way, that's just how I feel about certain companies in this industry looking to get into it. Is, you know, if people aren't saying anything good, there's got to be something wrong somewhere. So PAM, I hope you can get that sorted out for yourselves so that you guys can, you know, start climbing the ladder and doing better, you know, becoming a company that people want to come and work for. But right now, I don't hear many people. Actually, I don't think I've heard anyone that really wants to work there. So, sorry, that's just how it flows. So, I'm looking at a Swift truck driving at me. It's a blue truck, so I know it's not Nick and Sam, because theirs is more of a turquoise color, or aqua color, I guess, according to the pictures. Plus, they were in somewhere out west when they posted last night. But anyway, that's where I am this week. Still waiting to get some questions answered from the companies I've contacted. I think next week I'm going to start playing with the cooking equipment that I got on eBay that I showed you. And I'm going to start working with that stuff and seeing how dishes come out and what can be done to improve it. I do have one other thing. Let me get my truck parked here. I have one other thing to show you guys. I've heard and seen and read a lot of comments about why does my Coleman cooler's power plug get hot and melt? Well, as an electronics technician, let me tell you. This isn't a Coleman plug, but it's very similar to it. And I had a Coleman, and I changed the plug on it. I had the same problem. The plug melted. I changed the plug, and what I did was on the cord, and where the red or the positive side of that cord was, I went ahead and put a inline glass fuse holder in there so it would still be fused, which really, you know, the question is that really necessary? The answer is not really, because the outlet should be fused, but because the factory plug had a fuse on it, I thought, well, I probably better put one on it. So anyway, the problem is the way these work inside. So the tip has this little spring, and the little spring is what actually makes contact with the fuse, because the fuse doesn't actually get lodged in there. I'll show that to you guys. It just sits, and that spring is what makes most of the connection. So then down inside there's only a connection that touches the back side of the fuse. So when you drop the fuse in, it's just touching on one pin, and inside that spring is the only thing making the electrical connection. So what happens is, up inside that pin shell at the top, it starts to oxidize, it starts to build up some corrosion, and it starts to get resistive because the oxidation and whatnot. Same thing happens on the other end of the fuse, which is why I'm a big fan of fuse holders that actually have a cup that sits and compression fits over the end of the fuse, so that you get a solid connection all the way around, so that there's multiple points where the current can flow. Because of the touching of the tips of the fuse and not actually cradling the fuse, those joints they oxidize, they corrode, they start to get resistive joints in something like this. The resistive joints will start to cause a voltage drop. As the voltage drops, the current goes up because it's trying to compensate for the drop in voltage. Because of that drop in voltage and that current going up, current causes heat, so you start getting a heat buildup. Now, when you plug it into the dash of the truck, like Jerry's talking, he got a pigtail, and that seemed to help. Well, the reason why that helped was when you plug it into the dash is enclosed usually. The plugs are, you know, there's plastic or whatever around the plug, so that plug, you know, all that heat is captured there. It doesn't really dissipate. There's nothing moving the air in there, so that causes the heat to go up even more, and that's what helps to cause the plug to melt faster. The pigtail that Jerry's using, if you've seen his big rig talk pigtail videos that he's talking about, the reason why that's helping him is because you're taking that out of the dash, you're plugging it into an outlet that's not in the dash, therefore the heat can dissipate better. You don't have the problems of the heat buildup, but the joint is still resistive. That's why Jerry's center pin is now stuck, because the plastic is melted to the point where it's starting to bind that center pin so it can't move. What I recommend, Motorola makes a really nice fuse holder. It's actually kind of expensive, but you can get decent ones at the truck stops. I recommend not getting one that has the built-in fuse. The spring-loaded, the ones that I like are the ones where you solder the wire directly to the tip, and there's nothing, you know, the spring is on, you know, the spring-loaded part of the tip has nothing to do with the electrical connection to the tip. The tip is soldered, the wire is soldered right to the tip. The same with the ground side, the leaves on the side. Those are the ones I highly recommend, because those don't have the problem with oxidation, because your wire is hooked directly. And then you can get both inline glass and the ATC style and the ATM style, the small mini fuses, and the standard ATCs, the little bit bigger ones. You can get inline fuse holders to put in that line if you want it fused to stay fused. and then you're good to go. You're not going to see these problems of the plug overheating unless your outlet happens to be getting resistive, but that's a whole nother story. But like, I've got this thing going here, and when I turn on all my electronics, it'll start to warm up a little bit, but you know, for the most part, this doesn't really get hot. I've got this guy here. Now this guy here has a fuse in the tip, and it's the same style like I was talking. There's nothing holding on to the fuse. The spring-loaded part's down in the bottom, and the tip just sits on the fuse, and it's gonna start having the same problem. Same with this guy which runs that Road Pro fuse or outlet. I just dropped it all. It's very much the same way. There's nothing other than it just sits down there and makes contact at the bottom. And I can tell you, having done two-way radio for 15 years, I've changed so many of these plugs with the Motorola style that I was just talking about, because the plug that came on the scanner in the cop car or on the whatever, now everything wants to power up. Everything, you know, the scanners, the CBs, the everything, you know, anything that a police car would have in it, you know, that might run off a cigarette lighter plug, anything that had a high current draw, I would change those plugs to those Motorola ones because of this problem, and it would solve the problem every time. We even there was some lighting control equipment that had glass fuses in it, and they were the same style. They just touched the tips of the fuses, and they would get so hot they would actually melt apart when you'd have the light bar going. So, you know, that's what's happening. I've seen it. Everybody wants to know what's going on, so there you go. Now I've told you. I've told you how to cure it. So I'm gonna go in here because Carlos is looking out the window at me like I'm insane because it looks like I'm talking to myself. So we'll see you guys here soon. I'm gonna start doing some videos on using the Road Pros and all the cooking equipment I bought to learn how to get it to work while I'm not on the road. So when I go on the road, I already have a good idea of how it works, and I'll post videos on the how-tos of what I did to make that happen. So have a good one, guys. 7 3s.